people of Earth. Before your borders, before your governments, before your corporations, before your roads crossed the forests, before your machine entered the mountains, I was here. I am the soil beneath your feet. I am the water inside your body. I am the forests that breathe inside you. I am the fire beneath the mountains. I am the wind moving through the trees. And I have been watching. For thousands of years, I have watched humanity take from me. And still, I gave you rivers. I gave you forests. I gave you energy. I gave you life. I gave. But now, I am crying. The people who have heard my cry the longest, First Nations of this land. There are people who never forget that the earth is alive. People who understand that the land is not simply property. Water is not simply a commodity. A forest is not merely timber. If you're one of these people who understand the connection of Mother Earth and your soul, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more transmissions from the galaxy. If you would like to speak soul to soul, there's a link in the description. A mountain is not merely minerals waiting to be extracted. What you now call Canada, there are teachings that speak of relationship, responsibility, stewardship, the understanding that humanity does not stand above the earth, but within her. And yet history tells another story, a story of displacement, broken promises, residential schools, resource extraction, environmental contamination, and decisions made about indigenous lands without indigenous people having meaningful control over those decisions. And now, another chapter is being written. Look at the fire. Look closely. Do not look only at the flames. Look at who is being forced to flee. Look at whose homes are being destroyed. Look at whose communities are being evacuated. Look at the smoke. Look at the land. Look at the water. Look at what remains after the flames disappear. Canada's wildfire seasons have become increasingly destructive. First Nations communities have been among those forced to evacuate. Some communities have suffered devastating losses. And across the country, Indigenous communities continue to face the consequences of fire, displacement, and environmental change. So I ask you, when you see the flames, do you only see a natural disaster? Or do you ask, why are so many communities repeatedly carrying such a heavy burden? My children, I want you to listen carefully. This is a difference between asking a question and declaring an answer. Some of you look at the fires and wonder, are chemicals being released? Are these fires being deliberately caused? Is something happening to Indigenous lands that the public does not understand? Ask, investigate, test the soil, test the water, test the air. Study the satellite images, follow the money, follow the land, follow the permits, follow the projects. But do not manufacture certainty where evidence has not yet been established. I do not need you to believe conspiracy. It is all around. I need you to investigate reality, because reality is already serious enough. And now, look towards Ottawa. Look towards a law called Bill C-5. It became law on June 26, 2025. Part of that legislation created the Building Canada Act. The purpose: to create a framework for identifying projects considered to be in national interest. The government says these projects can help build infrastructure, strengthen Canada's economy, and advance national priorities. And the government says Indigenous right holders will be consulted before a project can be listed. But some First Nations leaders saw something different. They saw the danger. They saw the possibility that enormous projects could move faster than meaningful Indigenous participation. They questioned whether consultation was happening deeply enough, early enough, and respectably enough. Why? Because for people whose ancestors have lived with these lands for generations, national interest can sound very different from the words, our land. Tell humanity, what does national interest mean? It is a pipeline, a mine, a railway, a transmission line, a port, a highway, a military project, a new energy corridor. And when one of these projects crosses land connected to Indigenous rights, who gets to decide? The government says consultation must occur. The law establishes processes of Indigenous rights holders. But the deeper question remains. Is consultation enough? Or should the people whose rights are directly affected have genuine power to say yes or no? Or no, not this way. This is why history matters. Because you cannot understand today's distrust without understanding yesterday. When governments repeatedly promise protection, our communities repeatedly experience harm. Trust becomes fragile. When governments say, we will consult you, but Indigenous leaders believe they were not adequately heard, the wound deepens. When economic development is described as progress, while communities fear loss, control over their territories. The word progress begins to sound different. And when fire arrives, when smoke covers the sky, when people are evacuated, when homes disappear, people naturally begin asking, what happens to this land next? I am not asking you to believe that every fire is intentional. I am not asking you to believe that every disaster is planned. I'm asking you something much more uncomfortable. Who benefits? When land burns, who pays? When communities are displaced, who decides what happens afterwards? When regulations are accelerated, who gains access? When a project is declared to be in the national interest, whose interest is actually being protected? And when Indigenous people say, slow down, do you listen? Earth, I hold the bones of your ancestors. Water, I enter your body. Air, you breathe me every second. Fire, you fear me, but you also depend upon me. You call these things resources. I call them relationships. And when you poison the water, you poison yourself. When you destroy the forest, you weaken your own lungs. When you destabilize the soil, you destabilize your own food. When you contaminate the land, you contaminate generations. You cannot separate yourselves from me. That illusion is your greatest mistake. Perhaps this is why Indigenous voices matter. Not because Indigenous people are magically immune to politics. Not because every Indigenous leader agrees. They do not. But because many Indigenous cultures carry teachings about the responsibilities humans have towards the land. And perhaps in a world that has become a very, very good at taking, you need to listen to people who have spent generations speaking about responsibility. The First Nations are not asking humanity to stop living. They are asking, what kind of development? Who controls it? Who benefits? Who bears the risk? And what happens to the land afterwards? Those are not radical questions. Those are responsible questions. Open your eyes, not to fear, to awareness. Do not allow politicians to conceive or convince you that protecting the earth is still anti-development. Do not allow corporations to convince you that profit and protection are automatically the same thing. Do not allow conspiracy theories to replace the evidence. And do not allow official statements to replace independent investigation. Think, question, verify, listen. Look beneath the surface. If someone says nothing is happening, ask for the evidence. If someone says everything is a conspiracy, ask for the evidence. Truth does not fear investigation. You may forget. The land does not. Trees remember the axe. Rivers remember the pollution. Mountains remember the drilling. Communities remember the evacuations. The children remember the homes that disappeared. And the earth remembers every decision made in her name. You may call it Project National Interest. You may call it economic growth. You may call it progress. But I ask, progress towards what? A richer economy or a poorer earth? Humanity, you are standing at a threshold. You can continue to believe that the earth exists for you. Or you can remember you exist because of the earth. You can continue fighting over ownership, or you can learn stewardship. You can continue accelerating without listening, or you can slow down long enough to hear the people who have been warning you. You can turn indigenous voices into political arguments, or you can listen to what they actually are saying. You can look at the fires only as destruction or as a warning. I am not angry because you build. I am not angry because you create. I am not angry because you dream. I am angry because you have forgotten the difference between taking and receiving, between ownership and stewardship, between power and responsibility. The First Nations of this land have endured generations of decisions made by others. Now you have another choice. Will you repeat the pattern, or will you change it? Bill C-5 is not merely a debate about infrastructure. The fires are not merely a debate about weather. The question beneath both is who gets to decide what happens to the land. And that question belongs to every person who lives upon it. So open your eyes, look at the smoke, look at the rivers, look at the forests, look at the communities. Listen to the people who have been saying, we are connected to this land, because they are not only speaking for themselves, they are speaking about something you cannot escape. The earth. Me, your mother. And I am asking you not to worship me, but to protect the places that gave you life. Because when earth cries, eventually humanity cries with her. The question is no longer, will the earth survive humanity? The question is, will humanity learn how to survive on earth? Open your eyes. Listen to the land. Listen to the First Nations. Always protect the earth.